Good morning, everybody. It's Melissa again, back at Dragonfly Yoga Studios. In lieu of my Tuesday morning joy class, I am bringing you something online that you can do in your own home, at your own time, in your own space, with the intention really to just get you moving, right? These times can often have us feeling really immobilized due to our efforts to keep everyone safe, understandably. But that doesn't mean that you have to be so sedentary inside in your own home. So what I'm going to offer you today is just really something that targets most of the joints in the body, some more than others, but just getting us moving, right? To keep us healthy. So in terms of props, 2 blocks would be ideal. If you don't have them, you can improvise, right? We're all adapting, so do the best you can. A blanket might also come in handy because we will be on all fours for a bit, and sometimes that can be rough on your kneecaps, so you might want to consider grabbing a blanket or something like that. If you don't have a yoga mat, try the hardwood floors, try the tile, try carpet, and again, just adapt, right? You can hit pause and get what you need and then come back and join me. So I'm going to get started. I'm actually going to begin on my feet. So once you come to your feet, take a moment to just get a sense of what it feels like to be in your body, right? Coming into the present moment, current time and space. I often like to close my eyes to get centered and to kind of come home to my own physical body. So you might take a couple full deep breaths here and just begin to notice. And it's hard for me to stay still, so I'm already kind of beginning to play with the way I'm carrying the weight in my body. So you might begin to imagine you have a paintbrush on the crown of your head and you're going to draw circles on the ceiling, or if you're outside, on the sky. So I'm kind of moving my body like one unit. So beginning to really get a sense of the way I carry weight in my feet. So shifting forward onto the big toe mounds and the toes, to the left, to the right, back onto the heels. Switching directions of those circles if you haven't. It's beginning to enliven our kinesthetic awareness, right? That sense of feeling from the inside out. And then once you find that tripod of support, right, your big toe mound, your little toe mound, and your heel, and you feel like your weight is distributed evenly, from here I'm going to try to keep that weight distributed evenly, as if I were making footprints in the mud. Those prints would be identical. And I might take a soft bend in my knee and actually even put maybe a little bit more space between my knees here. And then I'm going to start to shift my hips. So I'm kind of drawing circles with my pelvis over my feet and my ankles. But I'm not allowing the weight to shift. So beginning to wake up the hip joints, the low back, maybe the side body a little bit. And maybe this is a little uncomfortable for you. And notice. You might even exaggerate that feeling. Again, not changing the weight distribution, but just really finding a little movement in the pelvis. And then coming back to stillness, finding that tripod base of support. I'm going to now try to keep my pelvis really still, keep the weight distributed evenly through my feet, and begin to shift my rib cage from side to side. So sometimes just to help find that lateral movement from side to side, I might even bring my thumb and my index finger at the base of my rib cage, my lowest rib, and then my hip points. So that again, I'm kind of shifting from side to side rather than forward and back or round and round. Again, keeping my pelvis as stationary and as stable as I can while I move from left to right. And then I might even take my arms out if that feels good. And I don't know what this is looking like with my 7 months pregnant belly, but hopefully you can kind of see that movement from side to side. Yay. And then coming back to stillness, I'm gonna try to shift, again, keeping my pelvis stationary, my weight distributed evenly through my feet. Can I send my sternum forward in space? And then back. So forward and back. And this is kind of tough to find this, especially if it's new for you. So I'm not just simply moving my shoulder blades, moving into protraction and retraction, but I'm actually trying to shift the sternum forward and then back. Sternum and then forward. So think of moving your entire rib cage to the front and to the back. And then I'm going to try to combine that movement. So lateral to the right, forward, lateral to the left, and then back. So it's like I'm drawing a big circle with my rib cage. Again, trying to keep my pelvis as stable as I can. Again, sometimes bending your knees here and taking your feet wider than your hips can allow for a little bit more stable of a foundation. Switch directions. Oh, that feels so good. So warming up the spine. And then back to center. Yay. Maybe give the shoulders a little shrug here. And then we're going to start to focus more on the neck, on the cervical spine. So from here, I'm going to use some of my FRC training and do some cervical cars. So I'm going to start by drawing my chin to my chest, flexing my spine. So rounding out the back of the spine, and then sliding my chin to the right, kind of tracing my collarbone, dropping the ear back as I draw a big circle with my chin. So lifting up, and then as I move to the left, the ear drops behind the shoulder, and again, I trace the chin along the collarbone. Rounding out into flexion, coming back to center, and then let's switch directions. So the chin traces the left collarbone, ear drops back, I draw that big circle with my chin. Careful not to throw the head too far back, dropping the ear behind the shoulder to the right, and then again tracing chin to collarbone. Let's do that one more time in both directions. Yay. And now my point of reference is going to be the crown of my head. So imagining that you have maybe a paintbrush on the crown of your head and you're going to draw that circle again on the ceiling. So I'm going to bend my head laterally, so taking my right ear to my right shoulder, and then taking it back, again, not so much, and then over to the left, and then forward. So again, the circle is drawn on the ceiling. Ear moves to the right, and then back, left, and then forward. Let's try that again, different direction. Left ear moves to the left shoulder, maybe even pause there because that feels so yummy. And then we take it back, draw the big circle, around and then forward. One more time, left ear to left shoulder, to center. Ah. Take a moment and just notice how that feels. Maybe we've freed up some space between the shoulders and the ears. Maybe you feel a little taller. Just notice the residue from the movement, as I like to call it. And then from here, we're going to take our right arm up. Once you take your right arm up, again, find some buoyancy in your body where it feels like the weight that you're carrying is not stuck in any joint, but there's some fluidity or responsiveness in your body. So anytime we're in this standing position, it's not like you have to be super stiff, right? So as your right arm reaches up, you want to reach through your right middle finger, create as much length as you can on this right side body, and then invite your left arm to just dangle. And then taking your left ear towards your left shoulder, we're gonna start to make a little C curve. So really rounding out the side of your body here, inviting that left arm to just hang. Once you've taken that left shoulder as far as you can to your left hip, bend your knees a bit. Notice if you're still trying to carry the weight of your head or if you can let it go. And then just reverse segmentally, one vertebra at a time. So head and then hand is the last thing to come back upright. And then just switch sides. So your left arm reaches up. We inhale, create as much length as we can along this left side body. So really allowing the shoulder blade to come with your arm. Right arm gets permission to dangle. And then as we exhale, the right ear goes to the right shoulder. We begin that C curve with the arm. And then one vertebra at a time, we side bend. Trying to reach that right shoulder towards our hip, moving to whatever capacity we can. And then when we reach our edge, we bend the knees. And then we're gonna unwind one vertebra at a time again. Coming back up, your head and hand are the last to come upright. Again, take a moment, notice how that feels. And then we're gonna come down onto our mats. So I'd like you to find a kneeling position here. And I'm gonna have my blanket handy. Because if you're anything like me, you've got tender little kneecaps that appreciate some support when you're on your knees. So from here, I'm gonna come into my tabletop position. Once I take a moment and orient myself to this new position, I'm gonna begin to play with the way I'm distributing my weight again. So possibly shifting my weight from side to side. Noticing how it feels to bear weight on my wrists. And then I always like to begin just orienting my hands at different positions. So changing the placement of your hands, the direction your fingers are pointing. You don't have to move them at the same time. You can just get creative here. What does it feel like as you bear load in your wrists? Because unless you're walking around on your hands all day, our wrists aren't really used to this kind of load. And then from here, we're going to take our hands so that the palms are facing up. And we're gonna try to keep the elbows straight. And again, if you're looking at me, you can see my hands are a little bit forward of my shoulders, and that's totally fine. They don't have to be right underneath. And at any point, if that's too much weight, you can always sink your load back in towards your heels. But here, I'm gonna try to lower down with control. So on an inhalation, the elbows move out wide, and then I'm gonna exhale and press myself back up. 2 more times. Inhale as you lower with control. Exhale as you press it back up. 1 more. And then once you come back up to the top, try to make a fist here. So drawing your fingers towards your wrist creases and just squeeze your fingers as best you can. So making a fist. So my knuckles and the backs of my palms are still on the mat. And then go ahead and come up onto your knuckles in that fist position again. And then from here, start to spiral the eyes of your elbows forward and back. I'm keeping my fist and my wrists here stable, so the movement isn't occurring there. Instead, I'm actually spiraling my arm bones in the shoulder sockets, externally and internally rotating. And then, keeping these wrists in this neutral position on my knuckles, I'm going to try to press the mat away as much as I can, spreading my shoulder blades across my back. And I'm actually going to lift the back of my head up as well so that the neck stays really long. So careful not to just hang here or arch your neck into extension. So as I lift my sternum and my rib cage up between the shoulder blades, then I'm going to do the opposite and allow the shoulder blades to come together. So I'm going to press into the mat, shoulder blades spread, and then sink the heart towards the mat as the shoulder blades come together. A couple more of those. Just protracting and retracting the shoulder blades here. Nice. And then with the toes curled under, I'm gonna sit back on my toes. And I'll turn to face you guys here. So giving the feet a little stretch as I make sure my peaky toes come along for the ride, because sometimes they want to miss out on all this fun stretch in the back of the feet. So go ahead and just shake out your hands here, because that might have been intense for you. And then we're going to take the arms out nice and straight in front and just flex and extend at the wrist joints. Just a couple times, getting some more circulation there. If at any point your feet really start talking to you, of course you can come down. So adjust accordingly. And then from here, we're going to try to make a fist. So draw one finger at a time in towards your wrist crease. Thumb is the last to come. And then start to draw slow circles with your fists. So keep squeezing your fingers together. Draw slow, controlled circles at the wrist joints. Yay. And then hands straight out, fingertips reaching forward. See if you can move side to side, so laterally at the wrist joints. Yay. And then palms are going to reach down. Again, make that fist one finger at a time. Thumb's going to be the last to cover the fingers. And then start to lift up. So thumbs here are going to move forward in space, and then fingers reach up towards the ceiling. And I want you to reach your fingertips back towards you. So I'm pulling my fingertips back towards me. Thumbs come forward. And then again, make that fist. Thumbs are the last to come in. Draw your circles. Maybe your feet are talking to you. Mine are. So I'm going to lower down. And then one more time. Thumbs reach forward. Fingers reach up. And pull your fingers back towards you. So really waking up the forearms here. At least that's where I feel this. And then shake it out again. And then from here, we're going to bring the palms in reverse namaskar or prayer position. So my fingers are reaching down here, and I'm going to press the backs of my palms towards one another. Find some integrity in your center as you sit up nice and tall. And then draw the fingers in towards you, and then up. Back towards you, away from you, and then reverse. So kind of wrist circles, if you will. towards you and away from you. And then you're going to reach for your block. We're going to take the block in our hands, and again, find that prayer position. So this time, right side up, fingertips are reaching towards the ceiling. And I want you to press your hands together here. Again, find your stability in your center, that nice, strong, upright position. And then we're gonna slide our hands up so that we bring the forearms to the block, and we're gonna pull our fingertips down towards the floor, and now squeeze your forearms together here. So we're squeezing into the block, waking up our chest. So maybe you feel that around your pecs. Again, pulling fingers down towards the floor, and then go ahead and release. You can let go of your block, and then we're gonna come back down to our tabletop position. Palms are on the mat. We're distributing our weight evenly here. We're gonna come onto our fingertips, and I'm gonna take my fingers like teepees, or little tents, and I'm actually gonna bring them wider than my mat. And now I'm gonna draw big circles with my spine. I like to think of this as being stuck in a peanut butter jar. And you're trying to get every last ounce of peanut butter out of the jar. So bending into your elbows and really scraping the edges of that cylinder jar. And then switch directions. Exaggerating this movement as much as you can to really hydrate your intervertebral discs. And then we come back to center. Palms are going to spread nice and wide on the floor. And then I want you to lift up to where your finger mounds are. So that's where your fingers meet your palms. And then as you lower back to your wrist creases, try to keep a little bit of resistance there, as if there were a graham cracker or a cookie that you didn't want to crush. Let's do that 2 more times, lifting up and then lower back down with control. 1 more time, lifting up, pausing there, and then lowering back down with control, keeping that resistance. You don't want to crush your cookie. I don't. And then from here, let's make sure the toes are curled under, and let's hover the knees about 1 inch off of the floor. So finding stability and strength around our center, pressing the mat away with our hands, making sure we're not arching the neck or dropping the head, but keeping that nice long line of energy from the crown of your head to your tailbone. And then lower back down. Nice. Now from here, we're gonna, again, keep the toes curled under, start to shift the weight onto our left arm. And actually, I'm gonna face you for this so you can see a little bit better what my arms are gonna do. So I'm gonna really get into the shoulder and scapula here on one side. So in my tabletop, I'm gonna shift the weight onto the left arm and then reach the right arm forward in space. And then I'm gonna try that same protraction and retraction that I did before on my fist. So pressing the mat away, spreading shoulder blade across the back, and then lowering. So one arm, scapular push-ups. Other side. And you can notice here which one feels easier or more accessible. And then back down. Yay. Now we're gonna progress a little bit and make this slightly more challenging. So I'm gonna take my right arm forward in space again, and then I'm gonna start to take it behind me. As I rotate the arm bone and the shoulder joint, I'm gonna reach back bend my elbow and try to take my left hand towards my left shoulder blade. I'm still pressing the mat away with my left arm. And then as I move forward with that right arm, I'm gonna bend the elbow, reach for my right shoulder blade. One more time, reach it forward, around, rotate. As I reach it back, take a bend in my elbow, hand reaches for the left shoulder blade, and then back and around, forward. Bending the elbow, I reach for my right shoulder blade. And I come down. Whew. It's kind of hard. Shifting the weight onto your right arm. Left arm moves forward in space. And then I take it around and back, rotating. Bending the elbow, searching for my right shoulder blade. Straightening it out, moving it around, forward again, and then bending the elbow, searching for my left shoulder blade. One more time. Rotating, really squeeze as much rotation as you can. Then bend the elbow, search for opposite shoulder blade, so my right one. And then straighten, reach forward, and reach for left shoulder blade. Give it a little tap. And then come back down. So we'll give our arms a little break here, our shoulders. Notice how it feels, any residue from the movement. Maybe catch your breath if you're like me, and that was more challenging than you expected. This would be a good opportunity to grab a sip of water as well. And we're gonna come back down onto all fours. Excuse me. I'm going to orient myself back in this direction as we bring in a little bit more thoracic rotation. So again, I'm distributing my weight evenly. My toes are curled under. The natural curves in my spine are present. I'm gonna press the mat away with my hands, again, finding a little bit of protraction in my shoulder blades. And then I'm gonna take that right arm again, take a bend in my elbow, and then place the back of my hand, or excuse me, the palm of my hand on the back of my head. I'm gonna take a bend in that left elbow as I bring the right elbow down towards my wrist. And then I'm gonna open it back up, not allowing any rotation to happen in my lower half. So I'm really just looking to squeeze as much out of my thoracic spine as I can, and then come back down. 2 more times. Last one. Switching arms. Left arm bends, cradles the back of the head. I lower down, reaching my left elbow towards my right wrist. So I'm rotating to the right, and then I'm going to rotate to the left, but isolating this movement to my upper back. Coming back down and up. Last one. Yay. Giving my arms, my shoulders a little break. We're gonna come onto our knees again. Actually, let's come onto our side body for this one. So you might want 2 blocks here, one for your head, and then one right behind your pelvis. So we're gonna come to our left side in this sideline position with the head cradled on the block here. And my other block is gonna be behind my pelvis, so right around my sacrum. And this block behind my pelvis is just giving me feedback so that I don't rock behind or forward, moving that block. My left arm is out in front, is straight, coming out of my shoulder capsule. My knees are bent here, like I'm sitting in a chair. So maybe 90 degrees of flexion at your hips and your knees. I'm gonna take my right arm and bring it on top of the left, and I'm gonna clasp my hands and bring a healthy amount of tension to my arms to isolate this movement to my lower half. So I'm gonna be focusing on the hips here. We're gonna do some hip cars, controlled articular rotations, and the action in the arms is just gonna help us stabilize and isolate what's happening in the lower half. So I'm gonna take my right leg, bent knee, I'm gonna flex my knee towards my chest. And then I'm gonna abduct it, opening it up towards the ceiling, so away from the midline. And then I'm gonna begin to internally rotate it. So I'm lifting my foot towards the ceiling, drawing my knee towards the midline, and then move it back in extension. Again, try not to knock your block back. So keeping your pelvis, your hips stacked, sending your thigh back in extension, keeping that internal rotation. And then come forward again. Reversing hip extension and internal rotation as you send it back, and then we're gonna externally rotate it. So opening the knee towards the ceiling as the foot comes towards the midline. And then as you flex it forward, drawing the knee back forward in space. And then you're back to your starting point. So let's do that again. Coming into flexion, and then abduction, lifting the knee towards the ceiling. Internal rotation. The knee moves towards the midline here. Foot moves towards the ceiling. So try to squeeze as much rotation as you can, and then send it back. So reach your thigh behind you without moving your pelvis. Woo! I feel that in my hamstrings, so I'm gonna get a cramp. And then back through and reverse. So hip extension, internal rotation, and then externally rotate as you abduct. So knee comes up and then around. So you could do this several times. In fact, I would encourage you to do it several times, but for our purposes, we're just gonna do 2. And we're gonna switch sides. So now laying on your right side, maybe a block underneath your head, a block behind you just for feedback. Knees are bent. So waist is long here, right? In both sides. So mine might be a little bit more contracted here because I've got some more weight happening in the front of my body. But do the best you can to not reach your left hip towards your shoulder here. So as your knees are bent and you're coming as if you were sitting in a chair, arms are gonna come out straight in front of you, shoulders are stacked, hips are stacked. Left knee is gonna flex towards your chest. And then we're gonna abduct it towards the ceiling and then internally rotate. Knee reaches towards the midline, foot reaches towards the ceiling. Send it back behind you. So hip extension. Ooh, squeeze as much rotation as you can before opening it up into that external rotation and abduction and back. Let's try that again. Knee comes forward, hip flexion, abduction, internal rotation. Ooh, squeeze it out, send your thigh back, hip extension while internally rotating. And then lift it up as you externally rotate it and bring it back forward. One more time. Hip flexion, abduction, internal rotation, extension, send it back, and then open it back up and around. Yay. We can remove the blocks. And now we're going to come to kneeling as I check out my time here. So 35 minutes, just a little bit more. So blocks can be handy with this one, especially if balance is a challenge for you. So I like to have them just in case, especially because my balance is a little different these days anyway. A blanket can also be handy for the knees in front of you. So right now I'm sitting on my toes. So toes are extended. Pinky toes are involved. And then I'm going to shift my weight so that my knees lift here. And you might play with taking your hands away, stacking your vertebra, really relying on that integrity in your center to keep you upright. And then we're going to try to reach the knees forward in space slowly until the knees come back down. Maybe move your blocks forward in space, uncurl the toes, sit back on the tops of your feet. So plantar flexion here, like ballerina feet pointed forward. And then from here, we're gonna shift forward again, maybe using those blocks, curl the toes back under as you sit back, maybe lifting the knees. And then reaching forward, so my pelvis is gonna move here. As I reach the knees slowly forward, maybe even feeling a stretch in the quads. Woo. Coming forward, uncurling toes, sitting back on the feet, plantar flexion. And then once you're there, once you have your weight in your feet here, start to just shift your weight from side to side. Maybe take a full side body stretch, if that feels good. These always feel good to me. And then one more time. Maybe this time trying not to use the blocks, but instead using your arms in whatever way can help you find your balance. This one's the hardest for me. Last one. Ooh. Beautiful. And then once you're here, think about squeezing your inner thighs together here, so drawing everything in towards the midline of your body. And then see if you can lift some of that weight from your bum off of your heels and off of your calves. And just notice how that feels. Like work. Squeeze everything into the midline. Try to lift. Woo. And then lower back down. I'm gonna reach for my blocks. Actually, yeah. I'm gonna reach for my blocks here. Come into a half kneeling position. So again, a blanket underneath your knee can maybe feel good here. I'm gonna take my right leg and send it out forward in space. My left shin, I'm gonna rotate that so that, actually I am gonna get a blanket. So I'm gonna take that left shin so that it is more parallel now to my pelvis, meaning forward. So if you're like me on your mat, your back shin is gonna be parallel to the long edge of your mat. Your front shin is gonna be perpendicular. And then from here, I'm gonna try to sink back onto my back foot and then lift back up and squeeze my glutes as I kind of shift my hips forward in space. I'm gonna reach back through my bum to sit back on that foot and then reach back up, kind of squeeze my glutes, come into that left hip extension, and then one more time. Yay. And then from here, what do I want to do? I want to come into more of a combat stance. So I'm going to move that back foot again so that it's more in line with my left knee. And I'm going, actually, you don't necessarily have to do that. Come to rest on that back foot again. If you can, keep it in plantar flexion, so little ballerina, pointed foot. And then start to shift your weight forward onto this right foot. So I want us to keep our heel down here. And then you can allow your knee to shift forward past your toes. But I want you to press into your foot. So really encouraging as much dorsiflexion as we can in our ankle joint. So just shift forward and down. Imagine you're pulling your heel in towards your bum. And then instead of pressing down, imagine lifting up through your foot. You're not going to go anywhere, at least I don't, but just imagine you're trying to lift up. And then release that effort. And we're going to switch sides. So coming back into our kneeling, half kneeling, left foot comes forward in space. We're going to orient the right shin so it's more parallel to the long edge of our mat. And our pelvis is kind of forward or maybe at a diagonal. And then from here, I'm going to reach my sitting bones towards that right foot as I sink back onto the heel. And then the hard part, at least for me, is getting back up from here. So press into that left foot and then send your hips forward. Try squeezing your glutes here as you do that. And then sink it back down and then back up. One more time. Yay. And then we're going to sink back down. And then maybe bringing that left foot in a little bit closer to your pelvic floor. We're going to come into that combat stance, if you will. And you can always, you guys, if you need to modify this, if it's too much flexion in the knee, you could always do this from kneeling and just start to shift your weight forward in this manner. So you'll get the same benefits. But if you can have that much flexion in the knee and extension at the ankle joint, then do that in the back leg. Shift your weight forward in space into that left foot. So pressing down, imagine you're pulling your heel in towards your pelvic floor. So again, encouraging a lot of dorsiflexion in this ankle. And now instead of pressing down, I want you to lift up as if you're trying to just lift your foot away from the floor. It's not going to go anywhere. But we just want that action, that opposite action. Continue to breathe and then release. Yay. Woo. And then coming back to your knees. Blocks can be handy. We're going to take our right foot forward in space. Left knee's bent, foot is in line with the knee. Hips are stacked over the knees. From here, I'm going to try to find my balance as I just lift my right foot off of the mat. So bringing a lot more demand here on this left hip. And I can move my arms in whatever way is going to help me find my balance. And I'm going to get creative about where I take my right leg. Try to take and reach your leg in as many different directions as you can without touching the ground. So really challenging the balance and stability of your left hip. So again, what we're training here is responsiveness and adaptiveness. So notice I'm not being rigid or stiff, but I'm allowing for these subtle movements to happen. Woo! Switch sides. So right leg supports us, left knee comes out in front with your foot. When you're ready, start to shift the weight. So we lift the left foot up. And notice, this is a great opportunity to notice the difference in the two sides. And then get creative with where you reach your leg. Woo! Behind you, perhaps, if you have space. Wow. And back. Yay. That's going to conclude my mobility sequence today. There's so much you can do, you guys, with your body. So I really encourage you to just play and see what feels good to you. For the sake of time here, I'm not going to guide you through a resting posture, but I imagine we all have a few extra minutes in our day where we could give yourself that time to rest, to reside in the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest place that is so missed in our modern day lives. So give yourself a shavasana if you have the time. Make the time. And I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for being here.